Good morning, colleagues. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the last Community of Practice for Circularity session of the year. We know this is a challenging time, early morning, at least Bangkok, and also in South Asia, quite early. But we're happy to have two special guests with us who are joining us from different parts of the world, for one of which it is evening the day before. So this was us spanning different time zones to get you really good cases into the session that hopefully will inspire you still into the next year. We have been working on a digital by design for circularity toolkit over the past couple of months with your needs in mind, really drawing on the regional circular economy framework that we have developed with many of you. And we want to keep it alive and keep making it relevant and inspire us with different case studies. So we've been working on this, testing it with a few of you, readjusting it, and today is the day where we're really happy to share it with you. But not only share a toolkit with you, but actually making it speak for itself with case studies being present here with us. I won't say too much more and hand over to our strategic innovation designer, Melly, who's been leading this work. And then she will, of course, also introduce our two special speakers, Gustavo and Sid, who are joining us from Patagonia and Hong Kong.
Thank you, Luisa. Good morning, everyone. Let me share my screen. It's so nice to have people that I have been interacting in the past few months, and also some are new people here. Welcome. So I'm going to share the background of this framework that Luisa quickly mentioned earlier. Yes, in the past year, we tried to look at how we can help program team who are working on circular economy using digital as enabler. So we're thinking what kind of framework that we can introduce to help that particular challenge. Why this toolkit? We know that circular economy often framed in terms of materials, waste, resource flow. But all of us here wants to work in a more transformative requires, and that is needed a different system. And we see that digital technology can actually be one of the structural enabler if we applied it from the get-go. However, oftentimes we see challenges in doing so. We see digital as delivery tools rather than really enabler to shape the interventions. And we also see that what is not transformational will not last, but what is not digital, it's really hard to scale. So here are some of the reasons we're thinking, let's create these toolkits. So first, this toolkit developed by our team together with the help of our task force to address a gap, the limited availability of tools that apply both system thinking and also a digital by design mindset from the outset. It's pretty much draw from insights across different program teams in our country offices. We also gather feedback from colleagues working here, but the intention is really to be able to provide a toolkit that is useful for both people that are working on circular, but also people who are much more savvy in digital. About this toolkit, so it is a framework that provides library of inspirational ideas, self-guided, and we intentionally also look at different leverage points while we collecting these different inspirational ideas. We recognize that there are numerous libraries and catalogs in digital in development within UNDP, outside UNDP. So for this particular toolkit, we look at, we are using the regional Asia Pacific Circular Economics framework, and we collect the ideas and we connect that ideas into the subsystem in circular economy. So if you look at the toolkit, some of you already play around with that. It provides a system map, entry point and challenges, and a library of ideas that actually already implemented elsewhere. We have to acknowledge that these ideas are heavily curated. So we acknowledge there are probably much more digital ideas on circulars out there, but we select around 30 that we think can expand our thinking. And also we can see the connection, how these ideas can really shift the system. However, this toolkit is not a menu for digital products. It's also not solution catalogs. And we really developed this not for a digital savvy in mind, rather than it is for our program team. And you can use it in a different stage in your program design, implementations, or even monitoring. Just to show the overview how this toolkit being structured. So there are 5 subsystems that we recognize in helping us to transition to circularity: finance, movement, mindset, behavior, resource management. For this particular toolkit, we're focusing on waste, although waste is not the only resource management, policy and regulation, and market. And then here we recognize some of the entry points that links to each subsystem, or challenges if you wish. And then we identify some ideas or examples that we think can expand our thinking, can really become the conversation starter among us. We put all of these ideas into Microsoft Loop, and we put it in a way that it is a collaborative, where people can contribute, change, add, or even submit ideas. Again, by no means it will not be a completed or fixed overview or challenges, but at least as a starting point, we see that this is a good enough overview and also challenges to put us into a much more transformational idea. So just a quick one, we put it in Microsoft Loop. If you see here, one of them, for example, it's probably too small. Let me see if I can make it a bit bigger. So 2 of the examples that we put in the toolkit are, one is, both of them are here today, Gustavo and we are very grateful for their time, knowing both of them are not in their home base today, but generous enough to be part of these conversations. But these are just 2 that we put it here, and we have this webinar to just have the first initial conversation, knowing that there are more of the ideas in this toolkit. I'll just stop here, and if you're interested later on how you can have access to this toolkit, how you can read through all of this toolkit, we put them in the SharePoints of the Circular Economic Framework. And there is this digital circular toolkit, and you can click there for having access to that loop. And we are open to any feedback, but basically the idea, hoping that this toolkit can help anyone who are working on circular economy program and using digital and technology in their programming. I'll just stop here and give a bit of pause for any questions, clarifications for these toolkits.
Just at this point, if there's any major concerns or questions of understanding before we go into the cases that Melly mentioned are featured in the toolkit, which you can, after the session, of course, have a look at and go a bit deeper into. Any questions of understanding that have to be clarified before we look into the case studies?
If not, I think it's always best to hear from those who already doing it, right? And then you probably have a bit more questions or a few feedback. So with us now, there are two awesome people. Siddarth is the founder of Kabadiwalla Connect. His work, at least for me, is powerful reminder that informal sector is not a gap, but also an important infrastructure. He will tell you more. He's using digital tool relevant for waste picker, scrap shops, and informal MRF, and using data generated through this to reveal how these actors keep the cities running. And with us also Gustavo. He is the co-founder of Net Positive Labs, a venture builder creating markets and solution in carbon sequestration, secondhand products, and materials through biotechnology. Just some of them. He focuses on responsible business models and ecosystem that make innovations stick. It's a very short introduction that probably also don't do justice to their work, but I will let both of them also to introduce themselves and also share much more of their works.
And we will begin with Sid, if that's all right.
Yeah, sounds great. Give me a second, put up my slides. Thanks, everyone. It's really a pleasure to be here. My name is Sid. I'm the founder and CEO of Kabadiwalla Connect. We are a for-profit social enterprise that works to integrate the informal informal collection system in cities in the global south into formal waste management systems. I just want to maybe to start with just two important points of departure to kind of understand our work. Firstly, in the global south, waste collection systems are really in crisis. So most waste that gets collected by the formal system goes towards landfilling. There's a World Bank study which says that it can cost the municipality 20 to 50% of its available budget to effectively manage the waste that they're sending to the landfill currently. Plastic, when you look at the issue of plastic, that's kind of the zeitgeist right now. We know, for example, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation said that 8 million tons of plastic ends up into our oceans every year. It's really, the fraction of mismanaged municipal waste. So this is really a big challenge for us. But because there's so much value in this waste, and the second point of departure for us, because there's always been so much value in the waste that's going to the landfill, ever since the 1950s and 60s, you have this incredible shadow kind of supply chain of actors working to collect these valuable materials back into the system towards recycling. Just this slide is just to show that informality is not really like kind of a peripheral issue, but really a core issue. The ILO says that 60% of the world's population works in informal settings, and the informal recycling supply chain is very typical type of system where you see a lot of informal work. For Kabadiwalla, again, so I'm a data scientist by training. GIS and remote sensing is really my what I studied, and I really noticed there was a gap in the literature when where people really, when they spoke about informal actors, they really tend to focus on the waste picker, and so I always was fascinated to to get the opportunity to map the aggregators and their contribution. So before, and so I'm from Chennai, my hometown. It's the sixth largest city in India. Before going out and mapping these aggregators, this is some data that I knew. So there's a lot of waste pickers. Again, in the literature being cited, there's studies that say that they collect about 20% of what the city generates, the recycled waste. That's a big number. That's a few $millions worth of feedstock. There's also a study that says for every ton that was collected by the informal sector, the municipality saves money. So really looking at the cost of collection, which is a critical problem for most municipalities today. But of course, as we know, waste pickers have to scavenge. Health and safety is a huge issue, and really a lot of the benefits don't come to them in terms of pricing. Excuse me. So just to elaborate on the issue, I took the 20 most cited papers of the informal sector and did a count of, who they were talking about when they were speaking about the informal sector. So you really can see that most papers were talking about the waste picker, either as collectors or waste pickers, but not really any literature on the aggregators. And this is kind of where our kind of intervention started in 2016, where we won a couple of grants to kind of do the first ever census of the informal recycling value chain. So really looking at walking every street and finding every single aggregator, mapping it all the way to the processors. And what we really found was, apart from waste, because there are two other critical stakeholders that nobody was really taking account for. What we call small scrap shops. These are called Kabadiwallas in Hindi. They're called Kailan Kadas in Tamil. They're called Lapaks in Indonesia. They're called corner recycling shops in Hong Kong. A really important stakeholder in circularity that is really all over the global south and really established. And then you had these informal MRFs, and then it was going to the processor. Um, yeah, this is the map that for us, we were so excited to see this map because when I look at the number of level one aggregators, so Kabadiwalas, these little small scrap shops that are buying from waste pickers, but also the local community. I mean, I could be showing you a map of, I don't know, ATMs in the city or vegetable shops in the city. It really represents infrastructure that hasn't been taken into account, and really needs to be, it really shows how important these folks are as infrastructure collecting. What we found in Chennai was 130,000 tons of material every year. So 24% of what the city generates, $5 or $6 million worth of feedstock. And completely invisible now in most cities still. Um, the other interesting part here was they all followed principles of mass balance. So like when a waste picker would go and sell to the local scrap shop, material would get weighed, bills would get written. So the foundation of any digital solution in our case was to build on top of this general ledger system that the informal sector was already using. Um, so at Kabadiwalla Connect, we think about how we intervene in a few different categories. It's really the first is really mapping these systems and what materials they collect and how do they collect. Then putting in informal sector friendly digitalization solutions, and then getting into feedstock guarantees, but even talking about municipal collection. Just a couple of examples before I sign off. One is we were really excited to see a white paper that cited our work and this classification of level 0, level 1, level 2 being used. It feels like more and more recognition is coming in of the fact that informal collection in the global south is not just waste pickers, but also represents these infrastructure components vis-a-vis the local scrap shops as well as these informal material recovery facilities. And I just want to end with like a case on the work that we're doing in Hong Kong, where I am currently, where we're building a source to off-taker type of traceability model, which includes waste collecting from waste generators, um, to the first level of aggregation, to the pre-treatment and towards the offtake. Hong Kong, again, you have a lot of cleaners and waste pickers coming in to picking up material from the streets. You have these little corner recycling shops, storing and aggregating, doing a lot of quality checking. You have these informal MRFs, quite a lot of issues with health and safety, but a critical function, selling about 50 to 100 tons every month. And then, yeah, just mapping these ecosystems in Hong Kong, just because they're still quite invisible to the city authorities. Um, yeah, and just to show that for us, digitalization really is building on top of what already exists. Like there is a lot of economic and structural value and systems that have been created over time, ever since the 50s and 60s. It's the heart of what they do, and so building on top of their general ledger system and their mass balance philosophy is where we would see traceability really scale in the global south with the informal supply chain. Finally, what we believe as an integration pathway, the first step is always enumeration. So map these stakeholders, build these material flows and understand these supply chains, integrate these actors into various social protection opportunities that these countries have. In India, for example, there are local health insurance schemes that are free. You just need to do the hard work of integrating them into these programs. Third is traceable procurement. We really advocate brands and folks really getting into digitalized procurement. to understand who actually upstream. Like right now, you can say recycling is a little black box upstream of the recycler. And so really advocating for certification that goes upstream to understand who are the stakeholders in collection. And then finally, can you do dignified collection by actually working with the scrap shop and waste pickers to organize collection at a hyper local level? Yeah, thanks, folks. With that, I will stop.
Thank you, Sid, for that. I know that probably you have questions, but I want to hold that and then go to Gustavo for the second one.
Perfect. Let me share my screen and hopefully be able to share what I got ready for you. You see my screen now?
Yes.
Yes? Perfect. So thank you for inviting me to take part in this session. It's great to see others also pushing to do more and in trying to solve some of the big challenges we are facing as a planet. Just trying to add a bit of extra context in that intro. Been doing innovation for over 30 years in corporates, banking, telco, all of those always, I would say, from a very capitalistic point of view. So trying to help companies grow and make more money. And long story short, growing older, saw that there was so much to be done, and we were going too slow into transforming the system that decided to quit and try to contribute to changing and speeding up the transformation towards a more sustainable world. So I think this is relevant to understand that in my view, the only way to move faster is to bring for-profit approach, creating real businesses that would be out there for consumers and companies to choose them. And so that's what we do at Net Positive Labs. We help companies identify those business opportunities, design those business opportunities, and build new solutions that would both be healthy businesses, but also be able to have a positive impact in environment and society. So this is the reason why I'm doing this, and I think this is also relevant to what I'm going to be sharing. So we choose 3 examples, many things that we've been doing at Net Positive Labs. The 3 examples are Cambium, which is a carbon sequestration business that we built. Mustadam, that is a second-hand marketplace for furniture in Saudi, and Ciclo, that is a sustainable material that we figure out a way. It's combining waste streams, for example, textile waste, with a biobinder, create a new material, and we figure out a way to convert that into a real business that would address a real problem. So these are the 3 examples, but out of many things that we have done. But I think that the important piece here is that the three of them are showing different approaches. So Cambium, this is coming from a timber business in South America, a timber business that has been there for decades. And we were brought in to help them transform the business into something that would keep growing and bringing healthy returns, economic returns, At the same time, they wanted the new generation of the family business. It's a huge business, but coming from a family. They wanted to transform it to something that would have a more positive impact in the environment. So we, at that point, when we started, it was all around the reputational problems that carbon credits had. So we decided to build a digital infrastructure that would allow the business to track the real data, growing data for the different forests that we were trying to rebuild, and make sure that the carbon sequestration part would be really moving from a baseline, a real baseline, into capturing carbon in the right way. So the interesting piece here is not just the digital technology that came from sensors and satellites with imagery, but also the fact that we figured ways to combine different pieces of the ecosystem to make the most of the whole ecosystem. So we started using the wood waste to convert that into black pigment that would challenge the pigments that we use these days that are coming from fossil fuels. We ended up also converting the timber from the wood that comes from the trees into cross-laminated timber that would be used in beams for construction. It would keep the carbon sequestrated. The whole idea was to find ways to make the most of the timber business, but also have the best positive impact possible in this case. The second case is about furniture in Saudi Arabia, in this case. The problem here is not just the waste, the furniture going into the desert every weekend when they get bored about the pieces of furniture, but also it was about finding ways to use technology to make this business profitable. So what we did is we created a platform, a digital platform that would help take furniture from people and from businesses. We analyze the images, the pictures of the furniture, and we identify the status of the furniture, if it's in good shape, if it's too bad, or the possible value of the furniture. So we do that with technology, but then we also find ways to define the best way to collect the furniture. So we are using technology to do optimizing of the routes to take the furniture into the warehouse to then refurbish and bring it back to the market. So there's a lot of technology taking place to make the most. In this case, so digital innovation at this point, in this particular case, was key to make a second-hand business be profitable and a healthy business. And that's what we did in there. And the third one is biotechnology. So we combined taking different waste streams. And one example is textile waste stream. So we would bring textile waste and make it powder, combined with a biobinder, and create a sprayable new material that will help coat surfaces. For example, a table, or coat or reupholster furniture with a textile texture in it. So the biggest piece is not just the technological innovation in creating that material, but also what we did there. And is I think the most interesting piece has to do with finding the right use case, that in this particular case is hotels and restaurants in Spain. Spain is the third biggest touristic market in the world. 90 million people come to Spain every year to visit. And what we did there is that we realized that there's a lot of extra cost for a hotel or for a restaurant to maintain the furniture that is outdoors, out of the weather, beautiful weather, but that harms the furniture. So we figured out a way to combine the technology into solving a real problem. And in that way, we ended up building a business that is profitable and that is really having a positive impact in the environment. So these are three examples. The way we do it is we support companies into adapting their businesses. So finding ways to understand what they're doing and put different pieces into what they do. Maybe something, a circular loop, maybe some specific business model that would help them have a more positive impact. We help them build the skills, the capabilities that they need to do this type of things. And we also help them identify and launch new businesses. Cambium is one of the cases, which is this carbon capture, where we use a lot of technology to measure the impact and the growth of the trees. The second one is this marketplace that I shared around furniture. And the third is Ciclo, where we created this specific material out of the mix of waste and the biobinder. So one interesting piece that I can share with you. Sorry, I'm in a building without the proper conditioning, and I'm sweating here. One of the interesting piece of what we do, and I wanted to share with you, is the methodology, the approach we take. In this particular case, what we do is identify the opportunity very quickly, design hypotheses, and move into testing those hypotheses in the market. We create specific experiments to make sure that we, in a very cheap and quick way, we validate, confirm, or otherwise identify new routes and move into building stuff that we can expose and potentially scale after that. So that this is the typical lean startup thing that we have adapted to embed circular economy concepts into that. So that's all I wanted to share. Happy to stay open to questions and go into more details. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sid and Gustavo. We've been here super inspired here in the BRH room, already discussing the connections between both of your works. But we also saw some questions already in the chat, so perhaps we start picking those up first. And then, of course, I mean, for now, most questions are to Sid because I think he was the first to present, but we see a lot of linkages to what Gustavo was sharing. So feel free to comment. Maybe we're going to start with Van, who I think is here, who wants to share a little bit about what you've done in the Philippines and perhaps where Sid's work goes a little bit further and whether Sid can share any learnings. Van, are you here? Maybe you can comment directly to give just a bit of additional context to what you're doing in the Philippines.
Thanks. Thanks, Luisa, for this. Thanks so much as well, Sid and Gustavo, for just quickly about, because in the Philippines, we do engage, of course, the aggregators, but we have not done any mapping as extensive as what you have shared earlier. So I'm curious to know how you actually link how this actually benefits the mapping of all the aggregators to creating to lobbying this to the government to achieve the proposed integrated solutions? Are there any policy recommendations that that were drawn out of the mapping so far? I'm looking at the Hong Kong case, particularly. See. Okay.
Yeah, thanks for that. Actually, in India, like this, I did pull out only specific examples for today, but a couple of interesting ones that are really relevant on the policy side is, some mapping that we did on behalf of the Pollution Control Board in India. And so, using doing the similar kind of material flow assessments and this kind of census style of mapping for the Pollution Control Board, and that we have found allows folks in the municipalities, as well as in the environmental, like the Ministry of Environment, to kind of adopt the language and recommendations in that paper. So typically when we go to municipalities, everybody is comfortable with speaking about the waste picker, but there is no provenance around a level 1 aggregator or a level 2 aggregator, or rather a scrap shop and an informal material recovery facility. So I think we're seeing, I just want to point that, yeah, this work that we did with the Pollution Control Board was really interesting, and we can immediately see local stakeholders in the government then being able to speak about the whole set of actors in the supply chain. I thought that was one. When it comes to EPR regulation in India, there is already, I feel like, a tacit understanding that the informal sector plays a key role. And so there have been these pushes to baseline current collection systems before any intervention is passed through. And so the act of baselining, I think, is really a key element in inclusive policy recommendations when it comes to these stakeholders and what they do. I want to highlight a case in Indonesia as well, which I thought was pretty interesting, where it was so there's a French company called Veolia who's building this food grade PET to PET recycling plant on behalf of Danone. And so Danone had wanted Veolia to, in 6 years, build a completely inclusive collection pipeline. And so our baseline mapping really paved the role of what is defining that inclusive collection. So regarding level 0 aggregation, level 1 aggregation, and level 2. So it can be both on the private side and on the government side. But the key thing is to start doing this mapping work and really doing this granular data collection, and then being able to use that in the right type of policy.
Thanks so much, Steve. Back to you, Luisa.
Thank you. I'd like to hand over to Shilpi from UNDP India next, because she also has a few questions on specifically the trust within that ecosystem and incentives. And there's also a question on financing models, which would love to hear a bit more on from Gustavo, if that's all right, since you have also a lot of background in developing financing instruments in banks, in addition to, of course, the venture building aspect. But perhaps, Shilpi, if you could give a little bit of more background into your question, I think that would help both Sid and Gustavo.
Yeah, thank you, Luisa. Sid, very nice presentation. It was really informative. My question specifically, we have been working with waste value chain actors, including the waste pickers and the aggregators. And we also try to introduce certain type of digital tools, or you can say even, document certain activities. But what we experienced was hesitance from, or maybe, pushback from the aggregators, that they prefer not to document and not to be part of a system, and they are happy to not sell it to a particular value chain actor if that needs documentation. So this was one of the, biggest bottleneck that we experienced, and I would like to understand how did you, navigate through this issue, because it's throughout the Indian territory, and also what type of, incentives were offered to these aggregators, and what was the financing model or the business model that allows such digitalization or such, MRV system to sustain. So I would like to understand and hear from you.
Yeah, thanks, Shilpi. I think um, it's always important to kind of like do the digitalization from the supply chain perspective. So one of the key things is always mapping it to, this will help you collect more volumes, or you'll get little better pricing if you do this, or even some kind of site compliance
Mm-hmm.
and labor compliance. Like I think that this has always been a key for us. So just as an example, we're working with Shell Lubricants, and we upgraded some scrap shops, upgraded a level 2 facility as part of this, and implemented a digital solution. All of this was possible only because we were working very much within the feedstock question, or the commercial question of feedstock. And so yeah, it's not it's not exactly where these things map, where, like, of course there's a lot of issues and you have to it's about convincing them. Yes, it always takes time to talk through them, but ultimately from the market perspective, if you're able to satisfy that demand of making more money, that's been one of the biggest drivers for compliance. With regards to traceability, though, what we have found in our digital solution is actually not messing with their system too much. So not actually having them to use a new app or some kind of system like that, but rather we've had a lot of success just giving them a different kind of bill book, and just taking a photo of that bill book, and then OCR or some kind of algorithm is pulling out that data into the system. So the way is, like, again, they have a system in place already. So, and they take bills, they have a
Yeah.
weighing scale.
Mm-hmm.
So as long as you check whether the weighing scale is legit, is like a legitimate weighing scale, it's not gamed. And then if you just add your own, like, a more structured bill book, and then taking photos of that actually fulfills the demand of traceability at that site. But going in there very heavy-handed with a technology solution, or going there without really articulating like an economic mandate for them, that's when kind of systems fail. But all of it takes time, it takes coherence. So typically they buy and sell in weekly cycles. So working with them for 6-month pilots, then building longer case studies with them, that's the way to kind of like move them into a more formalized experience.
Okay. And did you also deploy, technical staff on ground to handhold these aggregators, how they can, use these new ledgers or maybe the tool, or were there any, technical team on ground working very closely with the aggregators?
Yeah, absolutely. Training is a big part of it. And so you always have a team there who's on the ground, like a local team that's on the ground working with them through the system, and why it's important, double checking data, just being a point of contact that they can always know that they're working. And so yeah, having a local team like in place that is kind of hand holding them through this process is really critical.
Also, another question is that you mentioned that you were working with the Shell's value chain. So where did you put a sort of a business model where Shell was, investing in your application, or was, having a subscription of your applications, and the aggregators were part of that subscription? Does the aggregator have to, pay any minimum amount to be part of your subscription value chain?
Yeah, Shell is an interesting example. It's all like based on continuous feedstock and quality demand. So basically, Shell Lubricants is one of the few folks out there who are willing to pay a premium for compliance data and health and safety data. So that's really the key element here. So it's not so much a subscription model or anything like that. It's just working with them to channelize feedstock through the supply chain, working with level 0. So through the Shell agreement, we were able to give waste pickers like health and safety equipment, health insurance. We were able to upgrade scrap shops, upgrade an informal MRF, and then channelize material consistently every month to a recycler in Gujarat. We were doing this in Chennai as the proof of concept. And yeah, there is a premiumization that happens across this for sure. But then Shell is an interesting example where for them the how you say the compliance is really really critical for them, and the scale up of that and the scale up model is really critical. So I think one of the big issues we always face is the premiumization of all of these services. It costs more than like the current status quo, And so yeah, how do we manage that from a scale perspective has always been a key issue for us. It sounds great in theory, but there is an added cost. And so how do we manage this added cost is because we're, what is now invisible, we're making more visible, and we're like showing every single point what the interventions are happening. That creates a premiumization on all of this work. And so how do we manage that is a big question we still have. And so whether it's green bonds or like something, I think certification will go a long way. Right now in recycling, certification really tends to stop at the recycling facility. So when
Right, right.
certification comes more upstream, then it's going to be a game changer, I think, for us.
Yeah. Thank you for that information. Thank you very much. Over to
Thank
you,
you.
Lizzie.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you. Thank you so much. We have another question from Timor-Leste, really a rich diversity of context today. Artemi, you have a question of scale, which comes up a lot, of course, in island states, or also in the Pacific and in Timor. Or at least we've heard that previously, in that context. So if you could share a little bit more. Also, Sid was touching on the importance of the supply chain, and Gustavo's perspective from the financing and venture building could be interesting here to really discuss the challenge of scale. If you could add a bit more so we understand where your programming is at, that would be super helpful.
Thank you very much, Luis and Nora, and thanks all for the presentation. My question was based on the experience in Timor-Leste, where some digital solutions were put in place in order to to basically help with the location of the waste and improve collection. But I think that the scale was really not enough, and so this is, I think, an app only worked for a few months, and then it basically the collectors stopped using it, while some people still tried to use it to flag the waste that they had. So my question is whether you think this is something that is only applicable in large urban settings, because the examples that I have seen, most of the examples, including Hong Kong, actually, I mean, they were from the very large urban settings. I'm now in Port Moresby in Papua New Guinea, and the challenge here it's the same. Of course, the country is much bigger, but it's not connected to places are not connected to each other, and as such, sort of the urban areas are relatively limited. Thank you very much.
Artemi, anyone in particular you would like to comment first? Gustavo or Sid? I think Gustavo
Yes.
is giving it a try
sure.
first.
Yeah, sure. No, from what I'm hearing, my experience is more in the Latin American countries, but I can put Mexico as an example of a similar situation. When we think of incentives, I think we are. I hope we are thinking in a more broad sense. It's about friction, taking some inconvenience out of the system. It is about economic incentives at some point, but in the end, it's also about finding ways to offer something better that can happen out of the work that they're doing these days. So we need to make sure that what happens in Latin America is that when we move to the informal economy, to an incentive that forces people to move into a place where they can feel that they're going to be exposed, the whole incentive mechanisms start to fail. So I guess when we're thinking about incentives, we are also thinking again about taking friction out, making sure that it's not only economic, but we also find ways to avoid any inconvenience that is going to make them shy away from that system. But there's no magic equation here in terms of incentive mechanisms. I guess we each have to figure out in each market what fits best for every specific context. So I don't have a real magic answer to that.
If I may, hi, Srinivasan, the digital transformation specialist here in this team. But listening to the conversation, actually, thank you both for such a rich presentation and perspectives. Coming back to the point about that Artemi raised and sort of listening to Gustavo's thing, right? This I completely understand that we need to think about incentives in a much broader fashion, right? And these questions of scale, right, are and where private sector or where we can help business models have to do with whether there's actually a viable business, right? And I feel like there's some sweet spot that we need to help articulate in any given context, right? It doesn't matter which city we are talking about, which has a little bit to do with how well do we have data on what exists, like the kind of work that SIDA has done to a great extent, right? To what extent can viable businesses actually flourish there, right? And trying a few different approaches to see whether it works. But critical for this, at least from a UNDP perspective, I feel, is how do we de-risk this, right? Do we go in, how do we take a pathway where, we test out a few things, whether there's something, because we will never know everything, right? That is impossible, right? But not going with the thing that, yes, we are going to create a business opportunity off the bat, right? When we don't even know whether that's viable in a particular country context or not. So it's almost like an open comment, open question, really, right? To ways of finding that sweet spot to understand, what in a given context actually is needed. Because we can't, the kind of work that Sid you've done, right, in mapping such rich data, right, in the actual making the illegible legible on which you can start to innovate on top of. It's not always going to be feasible to do that in different contexts. Sometimes it's just not there, but we need to spend that time and effort to really figure that out. Thank you. Sorry, just musing. Giving the conversation is giving me a lot of things to think about. Thank you.
No, I think it's a great point. Maybe using the example of the furniture business that we created in Saudi, which is a very specific to one problem, which is furniture. In this particular case, what we did is furniture it's a complex business because it's cumbersome, geometric in a sofa with a chair and with a table. It's difficult to handle, so it is expensive. And if you want to pick it up and load a truck, you cannot use all the surface of the truck unless you use technology to do sort of a Tetris there, right? And put the things in the right way and use the capacity at the most so that you're not wasting any money there. And then you need to also make sure that you optimize the routes in the city so that they can go and pick the right places and also the use cases. So if it's an expat that is going back to his or her country, then you better take all what is in the flat, and even if it's not the best item for you, individually. So in the end, what we did is that the high-end furniture, of course, if you think of a very expensive sofa, you see it is in good shape, you just pick it up, bring it in, you clean it, you prepare, and you can sell it at the good price, and you're profitable. But if you move down to subprime and to other type of furniture, you end up in a part where no one would pick it up to make money out of that because it's too low value. But that thing needs to be taken up unless you want it in the landfill, right? So what we did is that we subsidize with the more prime segments. We subsidize a bit down the line into subprime and into things that are not profitable, to make sure that we can pick them up and make the best use of that waste instead of selling those back into the market, but to avoid that those end up in the landfill. So the incentive in that case is adapting to the specific problem of a thing that is cumbersome and has a different geometry and is difficult and expensive to be taken into the logistics, right? So I would say that's a good example of what you were commenting.
Yeah, and I know we'll stop in time, but I really like that comment, just because, I mean, just our history we would have never started Kabadiwalla Connect if we didn't win a few grants. That I just remember this global partnership for sustainable development data, which was really just data focused. And I think when you look at the global south, there's just so many stakeholders and actors who are still invisible. Like when you look at the repair and recycling economy, there's a lot of work that's just not visualized or not thought about, and there's a lot of biases against this or that. And so then in this data gap, we have this kind of, we tend to not focus on our own strengths and look at outside examples of what we can do. And so I feel building a data set around, the key enablers of these critical circular economy stakeholders is just an amazing starting point, because now, you can model things, you can build agent-based models for cities to look at, if you were to like push this material into the supply chain, how much money could you save the municipality? So biggest issue here is always, for us, is always that the municipalities, it's too costly for them. It's just to send everything to the landfill. And this informal supply chain that's still invisible is just doing so much of this heavy lifting, but completely invisible.
Thank you so much. And we love how these things come into conversation with each other, which perhaps leads a little bit to also Sonam's question. So now I'm happy to have a one-on-one with you after. I know a few of us are working on the funding windows where you would like to bring in also a variety of ideas into the proposal. We can have a separate conversation on that. But thank you so much, Gustavo and Sid. We really love how this toolkit is not just a toolkit that will be there. It's imperfect, but is more meant to be a conversation starter and really bring a rich variety of cases to everyone's attention, of cases that are really at the edge and not the mainstream that we all already know, but where we think technology, not only digital technology, but also biotechnology and other technologies can really move the needle to advance circular economy transitions. I'll just share one last time the link to the SharePoint that we all have access to, where this toolkit is stored. We know this is middle of December, not an ideal time. So if you don't have the capacity, colleagues, at this point to go through it, we wanted to share it with you as soon as possible, because maybe some of you are currently working on TORs or on proposals and need some ideas. We're very happy to have a follow-up conversation with you and guide you through it, or have a customized conversation if you're working on something right now, such as Sonam here. But because we know it's the end of the year, Melly and I will be in touch with you again mid-January, just to refresh our memories that this toolkit is out there. Perhaps that is also going to be a time as you're designing new programs and are looking for cases as interesting as the ones that Gustavo and Sid are working on. We'd be very happy to do that. With that, just to being mindful of everyone's time, thank you so much for making it today. Thank you, Gustavo and Sid, for being with us and sharing your knowledge and expertise, and also really being very honest with implications and things to think about. With that, have a good day, everyone. Bye.
Bye. Thanks.
Thank you.